Welcome to episode 3 of the Broadway Shuffle, a Texas Tech sports podcast with Conrad, Clayton, and Zyler. I'm Brennan. You can join us every Monday and Thursday wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on our Instagram and Facebook at the Broadway Shuffle Pod and on X at the Broadway Shuff. Gentlemen, we're here after week 1, and I was expecting this episode to be something more of a wow, did we see, everything that went well against an FCS opponent for the first game of the year? And instead, we're here contemplating if we're even going to win another game this football season. It seems like, and, I wanted to get into Tyler Shuck and his comments and all this, and I had all this other stuff planned for us to go into because I felt like we would have plenty of time to discuss other things outside of this game, and that was not the case in Lubbock, Texas, from the Jones on Saturday night. There's a lot to dissect here, but I want to start off positive, I guess, if that's possible. I've never been this depressed after a win, maybe Houston Baptist, which is worse than Abilene Christian, I think. But Zyler, you were there, and maybe give us something exciting about what was going on inside the Jones that wasn't football. What was it like being in there? Give us some sights and sounds from the Jones. Just make us smile, man. Anything to bring some happiness to this dreadful morning after.
Yeah, Brennan, I thought the atmosphere was really good. I was there probably 45 minutes before the game, and student section was almost completely full. That was upper deck. The crowd was a lot better than I thought it would be. I know it was a sellout, but you don't expect everybody to make it in for the ACU game. The weather was really nice. The south end zone looks fantastic. I'll get into that a little bit later. We were able to actually tour it after the game. It is state of the art. It looks really nice. It's way louder on the south side. It's noticeable. I didn't love the team entrance. I didn't think it was as there's just some administrative and some some other hurdles they need to get through. It's not as intense as it's been in years past. It's still cool, like them walking through and touching the saddle and the red lights and everything like that was really, really neat. The horse actually galloped this time. We haven't seen that in a couple of years, so that was a big positive. I thought we were going to crush them after that. I was like, oh, the horse is back. The team is back. The Jones is back. And that was not the case. Other things, I thought the crowd was actually pretty decent, despite, kind of getting into a fist fight with an FCS team. Even at the end of the game, it was still probably 75 to 80% full. Not something I necessarily expected from Red Raider faithful at that point. And then just to finally kind of wrap up my thoughts on the stadium in general, south end zone, we were able to tour the coaches' offices. They are top notch. Those position rooms are really, really cool. Just the atmosphere, the recruiting lounge, all of that stuff is really neat. It's really, really impressive. And I think it adds just another level to the stadium overall. Did not disappoint, was much better in person. And the jerseys look really good in person too. I think the numbers are a little bit big. I'd make them 5% smaller if I had to change anything. But other than that, really no critiques on the atmosphere. I'm going to transition us right into kind of some of the positives from the game itself. I don't, I'm not going to sugarcoat a bunch of stuff. I don't think there's a ton of positives to take, but the things that I would say, and I know you will echo some of these, I thought the best thing that happened for you is Dre McCray is still very much a weapon. Anytime they kick to him, I think he had one that got stuffed at the 22, but the other ones, I think, got past midfield. He was one of the reasons you won the game. I thought Barron played pretty solid against an FCS opponent. He didn't turn the ball over like he has kind of been prone to do, just a stupid one that he doesn't need to take. Didn't take any, super bad sacks. He missed some reads, but I don't think you can criticize too much of Barron's performance there. I thought Caleb Douglas was way better than I thought he was going to be. I'd kind of written him off as like an SEC down transfer that's kind of athletic that won't do anything. He was really good in the screen game. Great on his kick out blocks. He was really effective as a weapon, both as a passer and a blocker. That's about all I'm going to say on the positives, and I'll kick it over to somebody else for your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, Clayton, why don't you go? I'll save Conrad for after, but I wanted to get your initial reaction. So if you're coming into this season, you're looking at Clay, we talked about it on our preview show, that the new offense, Josh Kelly, Caleb Douglas. You really like the receiving core's opportunity to shine this year. Was that something that impressed you, or was there another specific position outside of that that might have caught your eye as well? And then maybe anything else that made you smile yesterday?
Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot to smile about, honestly. But I will say that I don't have a lot of complaints on the wide receiver core or any of the pass catchers, really. I thought everything on offense was pretty good. I thought Josh Kelly looked even better than I expected him to. He's so hard to tackle once he gets the ball in his hands. I thought Conyers looked really good. Coy Aiken. I saw a lot of complaints about Hudson not playing, which I kind of agree with. Like, I would have liked to get him in the game, but I do think wide receiver was probably our best position yesterday, so I can't really say that anyone should have gotten less snaps. And then, yeah, I'll echo Zyler on Dre McCray. Obviously, Taj Brooks, he had a good game too. I actually thought the offensive line was also a little better in pass protection than I was expecting. They definitely sucked in run blocking, but they weren't bad in pass protection.
Yeah, way to shut out the offensive line too. Just give them any love that they might not deserve. But Conrad, man, you were cracking me up last night, texting me, and we talked on the phone after the game.
Yeah.
You want to share your thoughts just overall on what you witnessed Saturday night?
Yeah, well, let me start like Zyler and Clayton with the positives. I mean, you won the game, which you didn't do last year, week 1. So even it's hard to take that as a positive just because of the way you won the game, but you did win. You are 1-0. You're not Texas A&M, and you're not 0-1, and you didn't lose at home. Now they did play a different opponent than we did, but you still won the game. So I think, and you did find a way to fight to win the game, which I don't think, to give Joey and the staff some credit, which I think is still due. I don't think you would have won that game under Wells or Cliff, even though you did beat Houston Baptist under. I think Wells was the coach then. I could be wrong, but I think that was the case. So you did win, which, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get there, you still did win. The second thing for me, just to kind of echo Clayton, was that, and you, was that Barron, Taj, and Josh Kelly looked phenomenal. Yeah, Barron wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt the confidence when he walked out there that I was pretty happy with and optimistic about. He threw the ball away. He took 1 sack, missed some reads, stayed clean, didn't take any unnecessary hits. I think Barron's a really big bright spot for you going into the rest of the year, just like the rest of the receiving core. Now for the other side, I would like to announce to all of our listeners that the Kool-Aid factory for Texas Tech football has been officially shut down and may reopen at a later date, but probably not. I'll just be blunt. I am extremely disappointed in that game from top to bottom. 52-51 against a freshman team, and you're a college team. I mean, it's just, that's not what you expect. That's not what I expected from this team coming out with all the hoopla, all the pageantry around this game. I'm disappointed incredibly in the defense, because that's not the defense we had last year or the year before. Now, you did lose a ton of people, but again, it's Abilene Christian University. It's not someone that should even play on your level. I don't care how many of your backups went and played for them. They're your backups. After the game, I was really disappointed. I know it's true, Joey, but hearing Joey say that you had 4 out of 5 new starters on the secondary, I just plainly don't care. It's Abilene Christian. If you're playing Colorado, Arizona State, Cincinnati, any of the teams you play, like, I get that that's true, but to play like that and to be that disorganized, and for Jalen Peoples to frankly not even should have been on the field because Luck should have been playing, that's just really hard to see and to witness them play that bad and look that disorganized. Now, kudos to ACU. Maverick McIver played really, really well. Trey Cleveland played well. Nehemiah Martinez played well. All those guys we know of. But it's just really disappointing to see your team after an offseason like we had, and with the talent that we thought we had, even on the defense side of the ball, come out and allow that many points to that team on opening night in your stadium. So extremely disappointed overall. And I know we're going to talk about our confidence levels for the rest of the season a little bit later, but those are just my initial thoughts on the game, both positive and negative.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I don't even really want to get into any positives specifically. I think I echo what most of you said. I saw Josh Kelly do stuff that we did not see a single receiver do once last year, which was break tackles, make people miss in the open field. That was impressive. Taj was Taj, but my disappointment goes beyond what happened on the field, quite frankly. I mean, it's more so for us as fans and for the donors. I mean, you talk all offseason, new Adidas drop. Mahomes is coming to speak to your team 2 weeks before. You build this new end zone. You hype this up to be you film the brand on YouTube, on Texas Tech TV, and you have all this going on. And we hear all this conversation. I don't know if y'all feel this, but I'm just kind of like, that's what you came out with? Like, is this all, are we just putting lipstick, on an ugly girl and calling her cute? Like, is that what this program is now? Because that to me feels like that's what last night felt like. It's like this team could not stop Abilene Christian. Now, whether Maverick McIver played for you, he couldn't even become second string for you. Nehemiah Martinez and Trey Cleveland saw a minute, but you can't use that as an excuse. I do think if there was one team in their position that was equipped to compete with you, it was probably them, just because of the familiarity with their coach, some players. But at the end of the day, that's no excuse. And I feel more for us as fans that we had to witness a 2-point conversion sack to close out that game in overtime after everything we've talked about all offseason. And to hold us accountable here on the show, like, we went through our schedule, automatic win. ACU automatic win, North Texas automatic win. I mean, Clayton, Conrad, and I collectively pretty much wrote 9-3 and chalk on a whiteboard. And I'm looking now like no one in their right mind can sit here the rest of the year and say, we're going to win that game. You think Chandler Morris isn't, and Eric Morris aren't watching that film at UNT going, oh, baby, we can go to Lubbock and drop 50, or Arizona State, who just bull rush Wyoming last night? So all I'm saying is what this does, though it is a win, it doesn't matter. I mean, we have the talk for me is enough. Like, you've got to go do it. And I think I said this on the ACU show, preview show, was go show that you are who you think you are, that you are the brand. Go show it to me. Be aggressive, be physical. Tell us that you're different. And they didn't do that. And I think that's what hurts more than anything, sitting here talking about it, is you had an opportunity to do that with all this excitement, and you just, that's what we came out with. And so I don't really have a positive on the field other than it looks like Baron Morton is who we thought he was against Oklahoma State. He made every throw he needed to. His shoulder seemed fine. He could throw the ball deep downfield, which is great. Taj was Taj, and Kelly looked promising, and Conyers has some athleticism too as well. I don't even want to get into the defense on a positive note. That there's just nothing to be said with positive and defense. I mean, a 19-year-old driving a motorcycle down the street on University and Marsha Sharp last night stopped ACU more than your defense did. And prayers go out to the people. I know they're healthy, so that's why I can say that. I know they're fine. No one sustained serious injuries, but like that, he had a better job running his motorcycle into their bus than your cornerbacks and defensive line did stopping them. So it's just horrendous, man. And so I guess we can just go into, like, is the sky falling is maybe the question to ask tonight. Clayton, I'll go to you first. Like, is the sky falling on this team, or are we overreacting unnecessarily after what we saw in the Jones?
I mean, I don't think it's an overreaction at all to say that, like, if this is the performance that we get, then we're going to win maybe 3-4 games. I do think the good news is that, like, you play a sort of Power 5 team next week on the road. So it's like you have a chance to right your wrongs immediately. Like, if we had North Texas next Saturday, then I don't think, for me, there's like nothing that we could do against them that would like change my viewpoint on this team. But yeah, I mean, if we're able to, I mean, I know we'll get into that game Wednesday, but if we're able to go to Pullman and play a lot better and win that game, then hopefully this is just like a fluke and you are right on track. But definitely, like, if our defense looks like this for the rest of the year, we're going to really struggle to make a bowl game.
Yeah, and Z, you tend to calm us all down just in general. Is there in your mind? I know you texted us like just a reminder. I know you weren't going to mention this, but I'll say it, that South Alabama beat Oklahoma State 33-7 last year. Like, let's calm down. In your mind, is this one of those games where we can rebound, and or are you just looking at the talent on the defensive side of the ball and going, yeah, there's just no way we're winning 8 games this year?
It's tough to say. I mean, hindsight's going to help a ton. I think what I saw last year didn't seem as salvageable, or last night. I feel like that's a different kind of problem than what Oklahoma State had. I would have felt worse about it as an Oklahoma State fan when that happened, because they were so old, they were so experienced, and then you got killed by a group of 5 team. I think maybe we have a little more hope here, even though we played a much more inferior opponent. You are incredibly young on the defense. You are starting redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores basically everywhere. You're playing 19 and 20-year-olds against 23 and 24-year-olds. That's not an excuse. They still played terribly. There's really no way around that. I don't know if you could see it on TV, but you were subbing in and out so much. I mean, you were subbing 5 to 6 guys in every opportunity that you had. And I look back on what McGuire was saying about the defense when he said it's kind of the no-name defense, and a warning bell went off in my head that that's probably not a good thing, but I chose to drink the Kool-Aid and say, oh yeah, we've got studs everywhere. I really don't think they know who their studs are. I think you kind of just have a lot of really good backups, and you've got to find, especially at the edge and the interior defensive line, you need to find those guys that can play 65, 70% of your snaps. You had some flashes from some of those guys, but they're all young. I mean, Amir is super young. Harvey Dyson's super young. You didn't have your 2 starters. Adedire was scratched. Dylan Spencer was out. And then your 3rd defensive end, Charles Esters, was also out. So you're down to your 4th guy. And so then your 5th, 6th, and 7th guy come in. And that gives me a little bit more hope on the edge that we're going to be more athletic there in the coming weeks. And then Braylon Lux being gone was obviously a huge deal. I don't think I fully accounted for how much being old on the defense helped a lot. Guys like Malik Dunlap and Tyler Owens and all of those guys were 23 and 24. And now you're starting 20-year-olds. I think your average experience is, I saw somebody tweet it today. I think it's 2.5 years younger at every position compared to last year. I didn't expect that to drop off the performance as much as it did, but it clearly made an impact. I need to rewatch the full game. I'm not all the way through, but the communication issues in the secondary were the primary culprit for a lot of that passing. They were just not able to hand off guys in zone. Roberts, as good as he played, struggles in zone coverage. Definitely not his strength. He's going to have to work on that. That's why they were killing us in the middle there. It's not all on him. Chapman Lewis had some misses there, and Baskerville had some misses. But you really struggled in your zone coverage, and then you were not able to play man with Peoples and Horn very effectively if you were trying to get after the passer. You also didn't have an interior defensive line presence. They were just you generated 0 sacks all night against an FCS opponent that threw for 500 yards. That's unbelievable. A lot of it was Maverick got the ball out really quickly, and the problem about that is you can't cover FCS receivers for 2 seconds. Like that's another problem. And there's a lot of statistics we could get into. I was just going through some of the EPA stuff. I mean, they deserved to win that game. They were, better from an EPA per play perspective. They were in the 98th percentile on EPA per dropback, and that's measured against P5 versus P5 opponents. So that's basically about as good as you could be from the quarterback position against our defense. So that's horrific. We were fine against the run. But I mean, it was really, really, really bad. You did not generate havoc plays. You had 2% of their passing plays resulted in a havoc play, which is just like a disruption. So 2% of their plays, that's terrible. Only 17% on the rushing, which is better, but still not good. The defensive performance was truly atrocious. There's really nothing that you could hang your hat on there. The only positive I'll say for the defense, 1, they're super young, and then 2, there's help coming at 2 of those positions. Braylon Lux will help you a lot. He's probably your second best player on defense, and he's coming back. He's going to help, and then you're going to get Adedire, and you're going to get Charles Esters back on the edge at some point, and that's going to help. But man, very, very rough performance for them last night.
Yeah, and when you're mentioning the FCS receivers, Conrad, before I go to you, these are guys that couldn't really play well on your roster, that also had to leave, and weren't making significant contributions as well. Same with their quarterback. So that even stings a little more, the fact that they wore your uniform and went out and cooked your defense last night. Conrad, what are your thoughts on that?
I think what Zyler said is spot on. You are young on defense, much younger than you've been in Joey's tenure here. But again, you would think that the guys you're recruiting could go out there and, even though they're young, beat older FCS players. Like, it's not like it was a respectable FBS opponent. Like, take A&M and Notre Dame, for example. Obviously, Notre Dame, top 10 team in the country. They go into Kyle Field, they win. That's impressive. Connor Wegman's not who you thought he was. But if you're an A&M fan, you're like, okay, you lost. It's not okay you lost. It's still embarrassing because they had beat top 10 teams in Kyle Field a couple times, the past 2 or 3 times I think that they had played someone there. But that makes sense, right? Like, no one is surprised, I don't think, that A&M lost to Notre Dame at home. Where there is so much surprise is what happened to you at home against an FCS opponent, because that's just unfathomable. I mean, I can't even tell you. I got a text from someone last night during the game, and they said, Conrad, I didn't realize that the FCS runs through Lubbock. I mean, just what in the world what are we doing? I mean, and we're opening ourselves up to that because that's the way we played. And I guess even though you're young, you can still salvage it, maybe. But if you're going to let them do that, I mean, what is Shadur going to do to you on November 9th? How many yards is he going to throw for? If you're going to do that, how many yards is this two-star kid at Washington State going to throw on you for? I mean, they did score 70 points last week, and they played Portland State, which Portland State, I mean, their defense is probably just as good as yours, quite frankly, yesterday. So what are they going to do? And if you can't stop anybody, it's just going to be the Cliff era all over again, where you score tons of points, but you don't win any games. And I don't think any of us want that, even though we want to score a ton of points. Having zero optimism, at least for I mean, there is help coming, but after what I saw yesterday, I don't know how any Tech fan can wake up on Monday morning and go into next week game with any confidence at all. Like, I have zero confidence. I mean, I thought we were going to go in there and win. I thought it's not Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Sure, it's not, but if you've got JV high school players out there playing defense for you, I mean, you're just not going to do anything. And it may sound like we think the sky is falling, or I do. And honestly, after that performance, I know that's the popular opinion, but I also think it's very fair in terms of what you saw, because it couldn't have been worse. I mean, the only way it's worse is if you lose that game, but it could not have been worse from a defensive standpoint. And honestly, back to what Brennan said at the opening, and I'd love to hear Zyler and Clayton and Brennan's thoughts on this. I think that comes back to coaching. 100% on the defensive side of the ball. I know you didn't have much on what they were going to do, but if your guys are not passing the right players off to each other in zone against Abilene Christian, what are they going to do against other teams? So I'd love to hear what y'all think about Tim DeRuyter and his coaching and the whole defensive staff, and even Joey, in terms of what we did on defense and how that looked. Because Joey is a defensive coach. That's his calling card and always has been.
Well, to Zyler's point, you don't know until you know. You're going against your offense all fall camp, all spring, summer. Like, you just don't know. And to see them, it could have been nerves. It could have been deer in the headlights. There could have been a lot of factors, and maybe they settle down and grow up. And we see players like this all the time, develop into people that become something. They become players through 5-6 games. Like, wow, that guy significantly improved since August 31st. And maybe that'll happen, but there's just too much youth for that to happen across the board. Like Ben Roberts, for instance, last year, was one of those guys. And yeah, but at the end of the day, this is coaching. And I think that needs to be addressed to an extent of, like, you were not prepared to beat them. And that does not fall, like, you to give up 51 points at home in overtime, to give up 500 passing yards and really just not stop them at all. where is that? Like, I guess my point is, like, who takes accountability for that? I don't know that answer, but somebody has to, and it can't just be all these excuses on why ACU is equipped to beat you or you are nervous or young. At the end of the day, you should still beat a team like that. That is your little cousin 175 miles down the road that people go to because they can't play for you. And they came into your new renovated stadium and embarrassed you. Where's the accountability? And I know people listening to this podcast are going to think that we are the most negative people ever, but the Red Raider, I mean, I've had so many people text me, this is the worst win I've ever experienced. And I feel like, Zyler, like, I thought your thing was, you texted last night at the game 1-0. You said 1-0. 1-0 in the field, 0-12 in my heart. Like, and I think that was perfectly exemplified, like, what happened. And so, Clayton, you can share more, but I do think that's an interesting point, Conrad, where we need to be able to address that, because I think a lot of people, I love Joey. I think he's a great man. I think he's done a lot of good things for this program. I'm not blaming him solely for yesterday at all, but I do feel like people just kind of choose to not address coaching yet because we're only in year 3. We've had injuries, but that to me was just not being ready to go. And that falls on people that are not the players. Clayton, do you agree, or do you think we're being a little too harsh?
No, man, I agree. I do think a lot of the defensive mistakes, like, the players do have to take some accountability. Like, you should be able to guard an FCS receiver one-on-one in man. But yeah, I mean, it is discouraging that in the 3 years that McGuire's been here, like, we have not looked very good at the beginning of the season in any of them. And like, I don't know what needs to happen for us to fix that. But yeah, I mean, I also want to know, this is kind of like off topic, but we heard all off season that, like, the defense was winning these scrimmages or, like, playing well against our offense. Like, where did that go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I meant. I think we mentioned that on an earlier episode. Like, when you're here, McGuire is like, oh man, Mo Horn had a great interception in practice today or stuff. And you're like, all right, is that good for the defense? Is that worried for the offense? Like, which, yeah. And I agree, Clayton. Zyler, do you feel like, there's enough accountability being taken after last night from a coaching perspective? And do you feel like not being prepared? I have two plays specifically I want to get into, but I want you to answer first, where I noticed pure coaching led to some mishaps.
Yeah. So I think being a head coach and getting up on the podium, I don't feel bad for them because they get paid so much. That's just part of the gig. Is almost an impossible job. He can't get up there and say, yeah, number 2 was awful tonight. If he would have just not played, we would have been better. If my DC would have done X, Y, and Z, maybe we would have won. He can't get up there and say that, even if that is what happens. He has to take accountability for it. He has to own it, even if that's not necessarily true. Now, it may be true, but I don't ever think you get good information on where things went wrong in coach press conferences. They're not going to give those things away. I've always thought that DeRuyter, I don't have any data to back this up. This is like purely a gut thing. I think he's a really good planner. I don't know that he's a great adjuster in game. He does really well when he's got film and tape to evaluate on the season. That's why I think our defenses typically play better as the season goes on. Once again, I do not have any data to validate that. It just feels like that. I think they really got out coached there. I do not think they were prepared for what ACU was going to do. I don't think they knew what he was going to do. And I think DeRuyter may struggle a little bit with that. Once again, that may be completely unfounded. Conrad, on another note, A&M is now 1-9 with game day at their site. It's the worst winning percentage for any team in the FBS. So
that's hilarious.
Just wanted to make sure that that's out there.
Well, and
some
I'm
schools
not
in Texas can beat
A&M.
the regional private schools. So,
What?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I had another question, Brennan. I wanted to get what you said. Does this feel worse than the Wyoming loss last year? For me, it doesn't, even though I think it's really close.
Okay, so I think that's a good question. You could look at it from two ways. Last year, you were projected to be a dark horse contender. Like, ESPN had you, I think, 4th in the Big 12, I believe, going into the Wyoming game, and that just looked like a deer in the headlights moment after the first quarter in that game. And you had the expectation of, this team is supposed to be good, and we clearly were not who we thought we were early. This offseason didn't have the national hype, but it had the internal. Like, that's what I mean. Like, the team, like we buy into this with what McGuire's saying, and I want to get into 3 things specifically on that. But like, for instance, Joey said that Micah Hudson is your best player on the football team this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Where was Micah Hudson last night? If that's true, and that is a microcosm, in my opinion, of like how Joey will say things might be to get the fan base excited, which elevates our excitement level. But in reality, it's not necessarily true, because if you're saying that and then the dude plays 1 snap, like this guy that we've been hearing about for over a year against Abilene Christian plays 1 snap, like what happened there?
He played more than that. He played like 10 plays, but who cares?
I think it was like 3.
No,
I really don't.
No,
really?
I
saw him twice.
I saw him once, and and then I saw him on a penalty. Like the point is, barely played.
I'll check his.
Our over under before the game was Micah Hudson 5 catches over under. We should have been doing 5 snaps.
Exactly.
It's crazy. So, Z, to answer your question, I think this is worse than the Wyoming game because that was at least on the road against a team that was actually pretty good in a FBS conference, and this was this was like UTSA playing Texas, and they're an FBS school. Like, it was your little brother within your system almost coming into your home and almost beating you. There's just no excuses for that. This was the worst I felt after a win easily in my life.
I'm going to actually disagree. And I will caveat this with like, do I think the average team would be more likely to lose at Wyoming than win by 1 at home to ACU? And I would definitely say they're more likely to lose at Wyoming.
Yeah.
But just the fact that we actually lost and we actually won yesterday, like I felt so much worse last year. And it's probably because you're right. Like we had so much hype. And I mean, obviously we were all buying the hype this year too, but I think that contributed to it as well.
It was funny how the games were so similar in the way that they played out. Like jump out to an early, it was 15-0 and 17-0. Capitalize on an early turnover on their side of the field. They claw their way back in. We go back down and score, and then they go back down and tie it for overtime. We get the ball first. Like they end up going for like it was playing out in almost the exact same way that the Wyoming game did. It was.
Yeah.
I thought I was like 85% sure ACU was going to win after we kicked the field goal to go up 3. I thought it was over.
Okay. And Zyler, on that point, Conrad, let me ask this question. I'll let you answer first. The 2nd and 1, you throw a slant to Coy. Okay. And not a horrible play call. You just missed a throw. But a 3rd and 1 in that situation, you take out Baron Morton, you bring in Cam Brown, who has never played Division I football, in the 4th quarter of a tie game on 3rd and 1, and you snap infraction, right? And then you go 3rd and 6, and then you get a penalty. And in my mind, where I wanted to ask you all this question, like, are we too gimmicky? Like, I know I'm just nitpicking a situation, but again, that goes to coaching. Like me, it's like, okay, you're 3rd and 1, know your team. Like, why are you taking out your captain and your quarterback leader? And you've got the best running back in the conference, at least top 2 or 3 right behind you. Like, just snap the ball and hand the ball off. Like, what, like, is Conrad, to you, like, are you watching some things happen like that, like with Tech, that happens regularly and going like, this is a coaching problem? Or are you just, and you can speak to what the Wyoming as well, but like, I wanted to bring that up specifically because in my mind, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'll argue for last night feeling worse than Wyoming, to be completely honest with you, because Wyoming, you're going to Laramie, the elevation change. Most people don't remember you had a weather delay that game. It's just a lot of different things going on. I'm not saying that makes it a better loss than last night's win was, but last night felt worse to me because you're at home in your own place. The talent gap is much more than it was Wyoming. Wyoming is much closer to you than ACU it theoretically should have been. So I would say last year with Wyoming felt worse to me because of those factors, but we did lose that game and we won yesterday. So it's, that's neither here nor there. But Brennan, to your question, I don't understand that at all. I get you want to get Cam Brown in the game, given your history with quarterbacks. That totally makes sense to me. Ideally, I would have loved to see Cam Brown play the entire second half last night. But for obvious reasons, that didn't happen. But when you make that kind of call in that kind of situation, and you put that kind of trust in that guy, your backup quarterback, who really is not, I mean, yeah, sure, he was a good player at West Georgia, but he's not the kind of guy I want the ball in his hands at the end of the game. I would much rather have seen, if you're going to give an option for the quarterback to run a read option with Barron. You're going to have to call a design quarterback run at some point, or like you said, you can just hand the ball off to Taj. I trust that Taj can get 1 yard every single time. I mean, I'd love to know, that'd be a great, interesting fact to know, is how many times has he gotten tackled behind the line of scrimmage in his entire career, maybe last year and this year at Tech. But when you make that kind of coaching decision, because that's, no player's making that decision. Barron's not saying, "Hey guys, get me off the field. Let's get Cam in the game." Like, the Barron's not saying that, and nor would they listen if he did. And so when you make that kind of coaching just error, I mean, there's no other way to put it. That is an absolute coaching error. It makes you question the offensive coordinator and confidence in him. I'm not saying Kitley's not an above average coach, but a lot of the gimmicky things we've seen over his tenure here, I'm just not sure how confident I am in him the rest of the way, because you've got the talent at quarterback, you've got the talent at receiver to line up and throw the ball 50 times a game and be really successful at it. Not saying you want to do that, but you do. So don't get cute and play so many tricks. Just be who you are and be who you can be.
Yeah, and Z, before you follow, the reason I asked that is because you said we kicked a field goal. In my mind, you should have scored a touchdown on that possession, and I thought that was a pure coaching decision. That's why I bring that up. But you can answer, and then Clayton, you can follow.
In defense of that play, we didn't even get to see the play because our center snapped it off his butt. Like, I don't know that I blame the coaching staff for the center making an error there. Maybe it worked. I mean, they had run the power play and it got 2 yards earlier.
Well, the cadence is different when a new quarterback comes in, and so I think that's where you don't put the quarterback in. You probably don't have that. You don't change quarterbacks. You probably don't have that happen. That's my defense for why I wouldn't like to see that. But you are right.
I didn't like seeing,
it was the coach. It was the center who did that.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't necessarily hate that call, because I think our slow read run game obviously was having problems in short yardage situations. I mean, we got stuffed 4 times. That's almost more than we do. That happened like 3 times over 4 games last year, and it happened 4 times last night. I think they did not feel very good about that. I didn't necessarily hate that call. I thought it was poorly executed.
Yeah, and Z, why do we do that? I think honestly, for me and some people, like, I watched our run game and I'm like, why are we running a 2-second read option every play? Do you know that answer? And if you don't, can you give an opinion as to why? Because it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so it's all RPO stuff that they're doing there. So Barron gets to survey what you call, I forget the defender in conflict. Typically, it's the edge guy. Like, if he's going to crash down, then he pulls it, and then maybe he runs it or he throws it. So that's why those typically take longer to develop. Oftentimes, you're often pulling guards or pulling tackles or something like that to get into position, or you're running a wham block with your tight end or something like that. So you're wanting to allow more time. I don't always love it when it's like 1 yard. I like it more when you need like 4 yards. But it was effective for us last year. I get why they went with, why we continue to run that. That's just how our scheme works with Kitley, and kind of how that run game has evolved with him as a coordinator. I thought Kitley called a decent game last night. I know that's never a popular thing to say. I thought it was fine. I don't think Kitley deserves really any blame last night. I think if I was going to blame a coordinator, it would be 95% on DeRuyter and 5% on Kitley.
Clayton?
Yeah, I definitely get what y'all are saying about putting Cam Brown in that situation on that drive. I think I will push back, though. Like, we did hand the ball off to Taj 3 straight times on the goal line earlier in the game and got stopped 3 times. And then I think bigger picture, like, of course, we would love to not have high leverage plays like that against ACU. But I think looking back to 2022, what made our offense so good that year was like our Donovan Smith packages in the red zone, so hard to guard. So I think, like, we need to get that in the playbook. Like, if we want our offense to reach the potential that it can, I think that's what Kitley's thinking, even though maybe in that situation, it probably would have been a better call just to stick with Barron. So yeah, just to defend him, like, in that area, that's what I would say.
I agree.
And my thought was, it's not that I don't want Cam Brown to play or have an impact on the game. I think I don't know if Brennan would agree with this, but my contention there, my disagreement would have been the situation, not necessarily the idea, because Cam did play a couple plays earlier in the game. I'm not sure I love that in that situation, but again, he's the one getting paid a lot of money to coach, not me. But I just didn't like it in that situation.
Yeah, I think my main point is that you've got a guy in Baron Morton who's been in the system. He's your starting quarterback. You're on the field at the 6-yard line with less than 3 minutes to go. Like, I just want the ball in his hands to make a decision and
Mhm.
to manage the offensive line. And I just didn't love the fact that we threw a guy that just hasn't been there before in that moment. Like, at that point, it's not like, and you know what you're going to do. It's either he's going to run a QB power or you're going to hand it off. Like, if
Mhm.
I guess my mind is like, why, if you're the coach, why put him in that position? And I feel like we just do that a lot. And like over the course that I've seen the last couple, sometimes it works. Sometimes Donovan Smith, catches a touchdown pass and it looks sexy and it's like that play was filthy. And sometimes it doesn't. And I get that's the part of the aggressive nature they want to do. And that might be Kitley's scheme. I personally am more of a traditional air raid guy myself, but I don't really get the slow RPO when your line can't even guard for 2 seconds very often. But that's what Conrad said. They get paid the big bucks. But that was just something that concerned me a little bit. So before we transition to closing here, why did Micah Hudson not play or make an
Yeah.
impact, do you guys think?
I had talked to some guys on the staff about this, and I was actually surprised he got in the game at all. I think he got fully cleared like 3 weeks ago. So you've got an 18-year-old that didn't go through spring, didn't go through summer, hasn't really gotten to work out and get prepared for college ball at this level. And then you're going to go ask him to compete against Josh Kelly and Coy and Caleb Douglas. From what I've heard, you're still learning the playbook.
Mhm.
And so you can't put a guy, especially in a situation where, hey, we actually need to score every drive. I imagine if we're up 24-31, he's getting a lot more run. But I was actually surprised he played as much as he did, just based on what I'd heard. He's not behind. It's like he enrolled 3 or 4 weeks ago. He played 2 years on a really bad knee and had to get it fixed up, and I think it's taken him just some time to get used to that. I don't really think it's anything for concern. He's healthy now, but it's going to take him a little bit to get the playbook figured out and for the coaches to trust him and the quarterbacks to trust him. I don't think it's necessarily a talent issue or he's in the doghouse kind of thing.
Gotcha. Well,
I do, Brendan. I want to add one more comment on the offense that I was trying to find some positives. I thought our screen game looked way better this year than it did at any point last year. It was actually kind of effective. I think Caleb Douglas was really good, both blocking and running on the screen game. I know they talked about that and they actually delivered on that. So that was nice to see. And then our triple option play with the read to Taj and then Barron rolls out and then hits the tight end in the flat. That play worked like 4 times in a row last night. They ran it. They didn't run it a ton. I know you can't spam that play like you could in maybe NCAA 25, but that play was effective and I hope we use that more. I think it's really, really tough to guard and it puts your zone defenders and your linebackers really in a bind, and Barron was able to make the right read on that consistently. The final note I'll have on Barron, he was able to get to his third and fourth reads several times last night, and I know it's Abilene Christian. I know it's an FCS opponent, but he did not do that very well consistently last year. That was encouraging. The Caleb Douglas touchdown in overtime, some of the throws he made in the fourth quarter, I thought were much better than some of the stuff he put on film last year. That at least is, encouraging. Maybe he can have a Herculean effort and carry us the whole season. I'm not counting on that, but that's going to be the worst defense you play. So I'm glad he at least looked competent against them.
yeah, and I think after last year too, Barron made some decisions last night where he decided not to throw into double coverage, right? You saw him kind of pump fake, roll out, throw the ball away, move through the pocket, like step through things that we didn't see our quarterbacks do very often at all last year. And again, even though it is ACU, I think that Barron showed us why we have been high on him for the last couple of years when he is healthy, which we haven't seen much of, but glad we got to see that. So final question on the game, then we're going to move into some quick notes around the country. 1 out of 10 confidence level heading into the rest of the season. 10 being the Kool-Aid will be moving around here shortly. In a couple years, we'll be drinking it. A couple years, that was so dumb. Couple weeks, we'll be drinking it again here come Arizona State. One being, we're not making a bowl game. What is your confidence level heading into the rest of the season? And Clayton, you can go first if you want to. I think we got some babies crying. I think there's three babies on this podcast now going on. So we're trying to keep the coverage. I think the guys are, if you're not watching us, the guys are laughing in the back. But Clay, you go ahead. I know you don't have a baby back there. At least I don't think
Yeah.
you do. So
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I don't know. I would say I reserve the right to adjust this heavily after next week, but I really do want to see us play one more game. Right now, I'm still going to say like 6. I still think we make a bowl game. And I don't think we're like sweating it either, honestly. I also want to ask one more question in the middle of this one. Would y'all be more concerned if we had won that game like 17-14 or 53-50 or 52-51?
17-14.
I agree with you.
Yeah, 17-14.
So, yeah, I agree, because at least the offense looked like you have some players. Yeah.
Tech fans can deal with a bad defense. We've done this for basically our whole lives. We get so mad when the offense sucks. We get so mad.
Yeah.
I think confidence moving forward, if 5 is like you were what I thought you were at the beginning of the year, 10 is like you're way better than I thought. Like I think I'm like a 4. I think I was concerned about the interior defensive line. I was concerned about the cornerbacks, and I was concerned about the offensive line. And I'm still concerned about all 3 of those. And now I'm concerned about the edge. So I think that has to be a downgrade. Sterling Porcher messing up on that 4th down play at the goal line. I almost had to run onto the stadium or like onto the field. It was just like, that was infuriating. Probably a 4. I think I feel like the win total should be set at 7 right now, or 6.5.
Considering that if you would have asked me this question on Saturday night at 6:29, I probably would have given you an 8 or a 9. Right now, I'll go 3. There's highs and lows, and I'm going to bring out both of them because I think, I like I said last week, the best time of the football season for us is the off season, because once you get into the season, you never know what is going to happen. And my ideas on that front were proven correct last night, and so I'll probably have to go a 3. I mean, I don't know. I could see a real world in which you look at the schedule, and I mean, I do think we will win more games, and I do think that it could be heavily adjusted after Washington State, because you go into Washington State and beat them 52-24. Kool-Aid Factory is opening back up. I'm just going to say,
factory.
I may add another flavor. I mean, it just may be, because that could happen. And so it is what it is, but I would probably say a 3, just because I'm so discouraged after the defense looking like that last night. And I don't know how you're going to stop anyone if you can't stop ACU.
Yeah. I'd probably am right there with you. Conrad, I think it's just it gets to the point now where you're just hoping that Barron stays healthy, Josh Kelly and Todd stay healthy, and you score a lot of points and you have a lot of fun and you find a way to beat teams 50-47 or 52-51. It doesn't matter how you get it done. A win's a win, like Pat said. Whatever it takes, you got to find a way. And if that finding a way is stopping ACU in overtime at home, then I guess that's what we're in for this year. So, boys, either way, we're 1-0. And I thought it'd be much different. We are 1-0, and at the end of the day, the season doesn't really start now in this new era until September 21st against Arizona State. So you've got a couple weeks to improve and iron out, get some guys healthy, and hope that you can find a way to still knock out a couple home wins there in September to go into the Big 12 on a positive note. So, and with that, I'd like to kind of segue us as we're closing just quickly. We'll get more of this into on Thursday's episode, but wanted to pull up the Big 12 power rankings. or the Big 12. Do we have, Conrad, do we have our rankings that we put out on our Twitter? Did I see that, or was I mistaking something? But
I don't think we've made that yet.
that's
Yeah.
yet. I just gave away our
A sneak peek.
sneak peek of our power rankings. Well, anyways, I guess
we should burn them now.
Yeah,
because
we should put Texas Tech at 16. That's for sure. I'm only kidding.
We're above Houston.
I kid. Houston, Houston lost pretty bad. But quickly looking at the Big 12, if you aren't watching, we've got it up on the screen. Is there any team specifically stock up, stock down that you want to highlight? And then we can get more into a rankings on Wednesday. But Z, you want to go first? Any team in particular that you're like, their stock from what we thought it was is way up, or their stock from what we thought it was is way down?
I've got 3 that I would have on both. I think Arizona State is a lot better than I thought they were going to be. They absolutely beat the piss out of Wyoming. As somebody who has played Wyoming and certifiably did not beat the piss out of them, no small feat. I think TCU is a lot better than probably what people thought. I feel the most confident about saying they're not going to finish 10th. They're going to be better than that. The third one, I thought West Virginia, even though they got beat, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on them. I think they look like they have dudes. I think they're going to be fine in the Big 12. Garrett Green is such an enigma to me. I didn't realize he was only 5'11". That could have been us out there. Like, he's tiny.
Yeah.
And then teams that I thought are way worse than expected, not way worse. Arizona is not as good as people thought they were going to be. Their defense, like we all thought, we had it here first on the Broadway Shuffle, their defense is going to have problems this year. I know they think it's just a temporary thing. As somebody that has seen defenses struggle in week 1, it is never a temporary thing. I think Iowa State's probably a little bit worse than I thought they were going to be, which is disappointing. And then UCF's KJ Jefferson is way worse than I thought he was going to be. He looked awful in that game. Their team looks good, but he looks terrible. They're gonna have to run the ball so much to win games. They have good receivers, and it's not going to matter at all. He looked terrible.
Yeah, Clayton.
Yeah, I agree with Zyler. I think Arizona State is the only team that I thought looked way differently than like how I expected them. I didn't think Iowa State looked very good. I didn't think Kansas State looked very good. I thought Oklahoma State looked better than I was expecting. They didn't really have any problem with South Dakota State. I saw a lot of Baylor fans, like they did beat Tarleton 45-3. I did not think DeQuan Finn looked that good.
No.
So I would say they're either the same or slightly stocked down.
I think their defense was a little bit better, but I think he was probably a little bit worse than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, agreed. And then, yeah, I'd agree. Arizona's defense looked terrible. They were really struggling with New Mexico for most of that game.
New Mexico, for what it's worth, was a home underdog to an FCS team earlier this year. So take that for what it's worth.
Maybe we should have been too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, Baylor did, I think, look a little bit worse than what I thought they would. DeQuan Finn is, I mean, a good running quarterback that can mask a lot of things with a poor offensive line is exactly what they needed, and that's what they have. But they did beat their opponent by 40 plus. I mean, at home. So I can't. Y'all know I like to poke jabs at the Baylor Bears, but I'm sorry I can't do it. I got to tip my hat to you because you did do something in week 1 that we just couldn't do, and we won't be able to dream of doing until next year. And I don't even know who we play week 1 next year, but I really hope it's not ACU.
Do y'all remember when we beat Lamar 77-0 and we thought the season was just about to be so crazy good? Do y'all remember that?
That was a different lifetime.
That was the most hype I've ever drank after beating an FCS team. I was like 77-0. That had to mean something.
What year was that?
I don't remember. We should do a segment every week on which coach we think is the most likely to get fired. Do we still think it's Aranda?
I mean, yeah, because you got to think the worst. I mean, honestly, dude, you think Colorado rides out Dion if they go 3-9 or 4-8 again?
Yes.
I think Dion's more likely to leave than he is to get fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, right now you're looking at Houston as the worst team in the conference, but they have a first-year head coach. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I would still say Dave is probably the hottest seat still in the conference.
I think
do
Neil
wanna-
Brown is a sneaky second.
I was about
Who-
to say that.
Who'd
Neil
you say?
Brown.
I was going to say the same thing. I was
that's
like,
what-
if Neil Brown, if they go like 5-7 or 6-6, what happens?
I think he's getting that extension was such a fake extension. It's like 2 years, and like they I think if they have a reason to fire him, they're going to.
Well, think about it. Last year, if he didn't buy himself some time with that season he had, he would have gotten fired after last year. If they would have gone 4-7, whatever, I think it was 2 years ago, they couldn't afford to fire him. And so any time you give your school an out to fire you, and they can actually afford to fire you, I think they're going to do it. And so if West Virginia does go 4-8, 5-7, I really do think they'll pull that trigger as well. So, but I would love to see Aranda go, and just because that means Baylor's not very good, but you never know what can happen in the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, on Thursday's episode, we'll be releasing our power rankings, the Broadway Shuffle power rankings that I unfortunately snuck into this episode that weren't ready yet, but that's fine. Well, Z, why don't you take us out, man? This is probably my favorite part of the episode. It's tech trivia time with Zyler. By the way, Clayton did a great job in your absence. Why you were having your second baby there. Clayton filled in nicely, asked a great question. But what do you got for us and our fans tonight as we get to rest our heads on a 1-0 week?
This is going to be a horribly depressing one, and I'm so sorry.
That's
good.
That fits the vibe. It fits the vibe.
Yeah. Way to bring that in after I try to turn this into a positive thing.
3 out of the last 5 seasons, we have had a 1-score game against an FCS opponent. We obviously had ACU last night. Can you name the other 2 teams that we played in the last 5 years where it was a 1-score game against an FCS opponent at home?
Houston.
We already talked about
definitely one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And now they're Houston Christian. Actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
They left the Baptist church.
They're actually probably still Baptist. They probably just took it out of their name, like everybody else.
Okay. HBU. Man, is Stephen? Is Stephen F. Austin the other one?
No, we didn't.
That is correct. In 2021, Matt Wells' final season.
I remember that.
Yeah, very much forgotten about because of how that season. It's so funny. I love thinking about that domino meme where it's like, Devin Drew gets an ungodly face mask penalty, leads to us signing our first 5-star ever, which is kind of true in reality that he got Matt Wells fired. But yeah, Stephen F. Austin, you won 28-22. 2020, you beat Houston Christian 35-33. Both of those seasons, you only won 3 conference games. So hopefully not an omen of things to come, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Wow. Well, better days ahead, hopefully. And man, that's crazy. You think 2020, that's just a fever dream, it feels like. But the fact that you beat those 2 schools by a combined 8 points combined at home. Oh, wow. Well, boys, that's why we're here every week. That was still a lot of fun. Win or loss, we're going to be here every Monday and Thursday, and hopefully we'll have more optimism week 2 and beyond. But tough start to the year, even though it's a win. But we still believe, and I know if we end up beating Washington State by more than 10 points, Conrad Mills will be chugging a Kool-Aid on Monday morning's episode. So with that, you can follow us on the Broadway Shuffle podcast or on Twitter /X at the Broadway Shuff, and on our social medias at the Broadway Shuffle. So for Conrad, Zyler, and Clayton, I'm Brennan, and we will see y'all on Thursday. Wreck 'em.
Thanks, Brennan.
Wreck 'em.